Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the M3 Market Update. My name is Melody Wright, and I try to do this show to give you some context about what's going on in the commercial and residential real estate markets, as well as mortgage finance, because all of these things go together. And I think that one of the reasons that often people find themselves in trouble is they don't actually understand the market they're participating in when they buy a home, because you are participating in a larger engine that runs our economy. So welcome back. There's a lot going on, a lot of news. And right before I started taping this, we got the MBA applications, which were down. So this is going to be counter to the narrative that everyone is expecting, which is rates go down, that demand that's been on the sidelines is going to come out in full force. But the problem is, guys, these homes are unaffordable. We're at an unaffordability level that we haven't seen since the 80s. And honestly, I would argue you can look at all of your numbers, et cetera. It's probably worse than it's ever been. So, small drops in rates for your regular homeowner is not going to matter. For your sophisticated, maybe upper 20%, they see a little rate drop. Okay, maybe that makes them make a different decision. But honestly, I don't think we're going to see this onslaught of demand. I do think we will have some, don't get me wrong, and we won't have a frozen market. I think, honestly, guys, this is when it's time to suit up for battle. Because I think, I talked a lot over this past year about being in the soup, and that's being in the thick where you can't see anything. Where we're about to go is into war, because we're going to be getting conflicting. If you think that it was conflicting and confusing before, it's about to get even worse. However, it's going to go faster. So I feel like last year we were just kind of wading through the soup, not understanding what's going on. Maybe a good analogy would be, at D-Day, everybody was kind of in their U-boat, waiting for that door to drop. And not, couldn't see anything around you. You couldn't understand what was going on. You were just kind of, looking toward your leaders or looking to the people that were talking at you for direction. And then all of a sudden, that door opens and you're on the beach. So we're kind of on the beach, guys. That's where we're about to be. And it's going to be important that you keep your eyes up, looking around you as quickly as possible to assess the situation. Because not only are we going to get conflicting narratives, with rates dropping, everybody's going to be thinking that, the housing market, and I've seen it already on FinTwit, it's actually comical, like how everybody thinks that it's about to go off to the races. I think it's going to be a mixed picture, just like I did last year. You are going to have demand. You are going to have people, needing to move. But there's going to be, I think, a little bit of a different dynamic between buyers and sellers. And I think buyers are kind of positioning to be in the best possible place right now. And even if you're in a market where, limited inventory theoretically, but there are actually, I promise there are markets. I'm not naive to believe that there aren't markets that don't have inventory shortages, but even in those, I think you can negotiate and really demand kind of a better price based on all these macroeconomic factors. And I hope to give you the information to arm you with those, because inventory is about to really start peeking its little head up, in my opinion, and we're already starting to see it. I'll talk about this a little bit later in the show. In the actual numbers, seasonally, this is when, on average, going back to 2017, you get a 10% drop in inventory because of, it's Christmas and people don't want to fool with doing open houses or having showings during Christmas. What I was seeing in my books was about the 76 cities I track, about an average of 8% decrease month over month. but nothing is equal. And so every city is going to be a little different. And that's why, we've got a lot of data behind us in these 76 markets. And I hope to add even more in the new year as I take some time to organize some volunteers, etc. Right now, it's just a crazy holiday time, as everyone knows. So it's not as easy. So, breaking news. Weekly applications are down. And this is going to be a shock to a lot of people, in my opinion. But again, it's the holiday season. So I wouldn't, I'm not going to put too much stock in these first weekly numbers. And what I can tell you as someone who has tracked these weekly application numbers for almost 15 years is they do go up and down, up and down. And so 1 week does not a trend make. And so I'm not even jumping to those conclusions. I think that, honestly, people are going to sit down at Christmas. They're going to talk with their friends and family. They're going to probably come to a realization that it's time to list that extra home. We have those 15 million vacant homes in this country. We have boomers retiring at 10,000 a day. We have property taxes and insurance skyrocketing, as well as other costs. And people are going to be like, I just don't want the headache anymore of my second, third, fourth home. Or maybe it's time to, really try to transition and maybe kind of think about my kids' future, et cetera, in terms of transitioning that home to them. But I think even if they try that, they're going to realize that, the kids aren't going to be able to afford it either. So anyway, my point being is as I say each week, there's a lot going on. And as we know, I was away last week. I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of the show. But we had the Fed pivot, right? Again, I would just say chicken bones on a dot plot, guys. Like, we don't exactly know what's to come, but I will tell you that rates had already started their move down. And that I believe is because you can look out across the world and see that a lot of countries are not doing so hot, Germany, China, etc. And here in the United States, although we're living on a wave of narrative, we're not doing so hot either. And I think that, there's a big machine out there pumping, trying to pump us up. But you can look at consumer sentiment and you can tell that, yeah, some people think things are improving, etc., but a big share of this country does not. And so no matter how many commercials, our Biden puts out how, the stock market's going gangbusters and, that was all because of him. Yeah, well, anyway, we're not going to get into that. But what I can tell you that the stock market is not Main Street, and what most families are feeling out there is extreme distress. Now, we're getting a little bit of relief in gas prices, and honest to God, especially in your lower, like not your top 20%, that relief in gas prices is very meaningful. And so I think that, kind of tacked on to what's going on in the stock market is going to improve sentiment. But, a headwind of, oh no, the Red Sea, we can't, we've got to take longer to deliver gas. There's a scarcity, there's a shortage. Prices goes up, that could turn on a dime. And so this is kind of what I mean by it's D-Day and we are about to be on the beach and kind of understanding what, looking around us, and things are going to change and happen quickly. And honestly, in some of these distressed markets like Fort Lauderdale, I'm not even talking about Austin anymore. I'm not talking about San Fran anymore, which may have bottomed. I'm not talking about those. I am talking about what I am seeing in Florida and certain cities in Tennessee, for instance, and certain cities in Texas where they're on the precipice because they had so much saturation, so much investment. It was a swarm, an infestation of the builders, of the speculators, and no matter how much singing about strong balance sheets, etc., these builders are going to do, it's not going to matter. And some of you may have seen that in Lennar's recent results, they kind of glossed over a huge year-over-year variance in their multifamily. And so that business is not doing well at all for Lennar, but it's a sign of fire there. And at the same time, they're actually saying as a strategy that they're not going to hold on or try to build cash, which I think is the opposite of what they should trying to be doing right now. They have a big loan or a revolver with the banks, and it's a syndicated loan, and we're hearing a lot about CLOs. I'll talk more about that later. Sorry for the tease. But, there is trouble out there brewing, no matter what the press wants us to believe, no matter what politicians want us to believe. So I'm glad you're here with me. I'm sorry for the delay. It's a lot of crazy stuff for me right now. I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of the show. Okay, so I had to talk to you about mortgage applications being down after we've seen massive moves in kind of the rates. And so this is going to be interesting, the reaction and that we get out there. Okay, so the other news we got this week is that, starts were up, or new home starts. And so as my colleague, Mr. Awesome, or Ulysses Awesome would say, first of all, these are seasonally adjusted numbers. So, I'm the kind of person, I'm always moving forward and I don't have time for certain debates, but I do trust my colleagues who have been in the industry for a long time. And what Mr. Awesome has said is that, these starts weren't really up. They've just seasonally adjusted the numbers. In my opinion, even if they were up, I don't really care because permits were down and completions were up. So permits, so less people kind of pulling a permit, recording a permit to do a project. And then at the same time, more completions. Okay, in these oversaturated markets, people have relied on, those big walls on the interstate. They've relied on, kind of not in my backyard to hide all this inventory that's really out there. They've relied on little tricks to make people in these communities think that all the homes in a subdivision are sold, when in reality, not even 4 or 5 out of, 100 or 200 homes. So there's been a lot of tricks this year. We've ridden, like I've been saying, on a wave of narrative. But, even though I honestly, when I got back from my first trip in February, I remember saying, everything had run out. I said that on a show with Coffee and a Mic. The reality, I didn't understand that ERC was pumping, money into the economy. We had that bump up in the COLA adjustment for Social Security. And, and then this student loans, we're seeing 40% of people aren't paying their student loans, and that's up from about 26%. And I think, definitely people who kind of engage with me, I kind of had this feeling this would happen on Twitter because they were saying, well, it won't credit report. But, guys, I just want to, we're in an election year and, there are going to be a lot of promises. There's going to be a lot of lies. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to pay that money back in all likelihood. There will probably be programs. There will probably be some principal forgiveness of it. But I can tell you that it's very strict when you get really behind with the Department of Education. And so I just would encourage you to maybe not take the easy road here in terms of piecing out and not paying until it credit reports, because you're going to be even further behind. So, I'd encourage you to work with your servicer and try to pay a little bit if you can. Okay, but anyway, my point is that there's a lot of, and also, the moratoriums and forbearances, they just lasted, I think, a lot longer than people really thought they would. So we really are at a place where most everything has run out. And I think that, barring other fiscal stimulus, and I mean fiscal, I don't mean, sort of injections of reserves. I think that your consumer they're tapped out, and I think we will start to see it. Again, there's always going to be a cohort that has plenty of money, but that's not who I'm as concerned with here in this show. Okay, so Starts up, so what? That just means more completions. And as we're seeing in places like Austin, like Miami, like Nashville, like Charlotte, we have too much already rental inventory. But what's changed, the dynamic essentially, is before where it was cheaper to buy a house if you could, it's now cheaper to rent in most cities, and it's going to get cheaper and cheaper. And so that's what this battle is going to be about. And that's why I'm saying it's time to suit up and have eyes ahead, because everybody's going to be competing for you. All this multifamily luxury, and that was another thing. This is the luxury unit of Lennar that is they're trying to sell. That's one that's coming under stress. And you guys who have been listening to me, out on the road, all I saw was luxury. That was all that was being built, and it was also empty. And so essentially, you've just got a total mismatch out there of what's actually needed versus what's being built. Because as you guys have heard me say before, I think every single city in the South thought that every single Californian and New Yorker was moving to their town or from Illinois. And the reality is that's a limited population. And believe it or not, we've slowed down the amount of moving in the last couple of years. So, narrative. Okay. All right, we've talked about the applications. We've talked about the builders and those starts. We're going to get existing sales today. I'm actually really kind of curious on this number. I haven't completed my monthly updates, but for a lot of my cities, I'm seeing sales really down month over month. And so most estimates out there are saying that they think existing is going to go up. We'll see. It could, but it's fast. And that's what's so hard when you use something like Redfin. They don't tell you what's the percentage of listings that are existing versus new, not unless you pay them a lot of money. And I don't have a lot of money right now. Okay, so moving on, I just wanted to talk also about Mr. Cooper. Just a quick update on Mr. Cooper. And so Mr. Cooper, we got news this week that it was substantially all of their current and former borrowers whose Social Security, addresses, etc., all of that was breached. And so I think that, this is going to be a much bigger deal than everybody's making it out to be. And I think that, the implications are going to be massive for that company. They've gone from thinking there'll be a $5 million charge to a $25 million charge. Guys, that's peanuts, and that's the beginning. And I don't even care. You can say, oh, well, what about Experian, blah, blah, blah. Like these non-bank mortgage companies have very little backing them in terms of power. They are at the mercy of the GSEs. Back in my day, there were people who could throw their weight around with the GSEs, banks, even my company. These non-banks are not in that position. And so, this is going, and I'll say something I'm sure I might get a little hate, but unless they handle this correctly, this could be a firm killing event. And it will take a long time to play out. And it will be like a knockdown, drag out, last gasp all the way to the end type of thing. But I would not be surprised if we don't see kind of those guys cease to exist. And and similar to my company, they might exist in some form for a little while, and until no more. Anyway, okay, so lots going on. I'm a little excited today, as you guys can tell. Want to talk now about inventory. And so as I was saying, historically, going back to 2017, which is what's on the Fed site, we've seen on average a 10% drop between November and December. So it's going to be very interesting to see what those inventory numbers are, because I think what will be really fascinating is if we kind of stay in line seasonally and we continue to see rates stay here or go lower. I am very fascinated with what the inventory shortage folks are going to come out and say. Are they finally going to have to say, It is just simply like the demand is not there. This is not a supply story. The demand is not there. So we'll see. Stay tuned. But I just on average, kind of what I saw week over week in my cities, these 76 cities, is we saw about I'd say kind of an 8% month over month decline. And week over week, about a negative 2.86 decline and about negative 3.82% to the average. So again, I think this is seasonal factors. But I also think, and this is what's interesting, which could be part of the seasonal factors, is that the builders are they're pulling their listings from Realtor.com. Someone scraped some Lennar addresses for me. I went out to Realtor and couldn't find them there, and they were on Zillow. Now, why would I, as a builder, list on Zillow and not Realtor? Could be a bunch of reasons. But we all need to know that Realtor.com is who shows us current inventory. So that's, important to understand. Okay, so I'm going to just hop into these updates real quick. So top cities with largest percent increase in inventory week over week from 1210 to 1217. And again, these are interesting just because they're counter to the actual trend of what I'm seeing of, inventory decreasing. So Brattleboro up at 5.88%, Sedona 1.17%, Wexford County, Michigan 1.11%, Galveston, Texas 0.71%, and Lakewood Ranch 0.64%. So again, not huge moves week over week. And of course, we understand week over week is not where we look for trends. We triangulate the data and we look around at all of these different metrics. And so monthly, weekly, yearly. Honorable mention, Fort Lauderdale came in. And so again, these are cities where inventory is increasing counter to the trend, counter to, what's happened historically. Okay, top cities with large percent increase in inventory compared to a 21-week average, 1210 to 1217. This Hoboken has been, on the move in several, so it's kind of interesting here, but their inventory is up 54.04%. Again, that's, there's not, these are, Hoboken is small numbers typically, but these are still big moves. Palm Springs up 21.55%, Bakersfield at 20.25%, Fort Lauderdale at 12.76%, Fort Myers at 10.38%. Again, this is to their average. West Palm Beach up 8.49%. Johnson City, where I am, up 8.32%. Pembroke Pines, sorry guys, in Florida, 7.95%. Miami, 6.36%, and Tucson, 6%. All of these are up to their average, 21-week average. A lot of those Florida cities. Now, as my realtor friends will tell me, Trish, Florida Sun, this is the season in Florida, this January, February. So of course, inventory may be rising in terms of historical, but when you look at these numbers, they're kind of greater than the trend. But I hope to kind of put together some more Florida metrics and deep dive here in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so now top cities with largest percent increase in inventory from the start. And as you guys know, I started in January. So we're rounding the corner to a full year on some of these cities that are, this week over week tracking. So that's going to be fascinating. I'm super excited about organizing all that data. And yeah, as you guys know, I'm a data geek who loves data, but is terrible at creating output for it when I don't have time. Okay. Hoboken moving up to the top, 79.45%. Bakersfield, 70.76%, up from number 3. San Ramon moving down here at 65%. Galveston at 43.94%, up from number 5. Fort Myers at 37.46%, coming in at number 5, and that's up from number 7. Coeur d'Alene at 37.05%. Dallas at 32.25%, up from number 8. Knoxville, this one is just wild, 30.30%, Denver at 30.17%, and San Francisco at 25.71%. I'll just stop here quickly and just tell you, I traveled up to New York last week. I didn't have time to do any site visits, hoping to actually do that next month in a couple of places around the city. But what I did see in Virginia is a whole bunch of exurbs with a whole bunch of new builds plopped in pastures, with nary a soul around. Didn't have time to stop and say hello, but hope to spend more time in that location. And here's what I would say, guys: in every city, no matter where you are, unless you are a tiny, tiny little town, but if you are a city, one of these pockets of ridiculousness exists near you. And, I think I've told you guys here before, what I do is I start with the Pulte map. So if you just go to Google and you say Pulte new homes and you type in your city, it's going to come up with a map, and start with that map, because it's not just Pulte. You'll go out there, you'll see all the local builders, you'll see all the shenanigans that are happening, and you won't have to just listen to me and trust me, you'll see for yourself. Okay, listings for rent. Listings for rent were actually up a tiny amount. I cannot talk today. 0.31% week over week, and by 4.71% compared to their 21-week average. And so that's interesting to me, and maybe this is a seasonal trend. Again, I don't have the data to look back last year for the listings for rent, that, people take the homes off the market and they list them for rent. Okay, but top cities with the highest percent increase of single family rental listings: Portsmouth, New Hampshire, up 25%, Newport Beach, California, up 19.85%, Sedona, up 19.35%, Tupelo, Mississippi, very weird, up 13.79%, and I have a feeling this is probably a lot of built for rent in Tupelo. Costa Mesa, up 13.41%. Okay, so top cities with the highest percent increase in single family rental listings to 21-week average. That's going to be Sevierville, up at 41.8%. Now, I tweeted out yesterday a picture of I don't even know what to call it, a box for rent. The rent had been reduced by $150, and it was still a ridiculous rent. That the household median income in Sevierville, Tennessee, is less than $50,000. I mean, these are people that are working, at the attractions. They aren't making a lot of money. And so people built these horrible little boxes and thought people would rent them for ridiculous amounts of money. That's just not going to happen. Anyway, okay, so Sevierville listings for rent, 41.8%. Cape May, 32.11%. Destin, 30.33%, Dallas, 26.74%, and Knoxville, up 25.95%. So Dallas and Knoxville making it both in these listings for sale, listings for rent, top numbers. So that something is definitely up there. I am heading to Knoxville probably next week, so I'll see if I can stop at some communities and see what's going on. Okay, so top cities with the highest percent decrease of single family rental listings to 21-week average. And some interesting stuff here, if anybody has any ideas, but I won't put it past in some areas, just, people strategically not listing certain things. But listings for rent down week 12-10 to 12-17. Denver at the top, down 11.31%. Still working on that Denver Substack, but that should be out by the end of this week. Boise down 10.40%, Bozeman down 9.84%, San Ramon down 8.59%, and West Palm Beach down 6.57%. And again, this is single family rental listings compared to their 21-week average. Okay, I think I shared with you guys last week that Airbnb has taken off their average daily week when you search average daily rate when you search a city. And so we won't have weekly information anymore, but we do have our month and year over year. And so, First metric I'll say today, top cities with largest decline in short-term rental average daily rate year over year for October. November results should be out shortly, but number of cities with year over year ADR decline for October was 39 of 76. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. That's not half, but a good chunk. Okay, so Palm Springs average daily rate was down 12.65% year over year. El Cajon down 10.61% year over year. Destin down 8.29% year over year. Nashville. This is important, down 8.18% year over year. Cleveland, that was kind of weird, down 7.88%. Okay. And I think I went over this one last time, but I'll just repeat it here. Top cities with biggest increase in short-term rental listings for October. Number one, Sacramento. Okay, so this is increase in short-term rental listings. Austin at number two. That's wild. El Cajon at number three. Las Vegas at number four. And Knoxville at number five. So yeah, Knoxville. Sounds like I've got some work to do. Okay, and then kind of ending up sort of updates, commercial real estate, some interesting stuff happening there, coming fast and furious. But most interesting thing to me last week was finding out that the Brookfield Property Group had filed a grievance against the FDIC, accusing them of picking the winner and not the highest bidder in that auction of the Signature Bank assets. Now, this story is going to be interesting to follow because in many ways, it's going to tell us about where people want this to go. So we're going to track it carefully and see how this all ends up. But I can very much tell you these auctions are political. I was involved in a similar auction back in my day, and maybe I'll share some stories with you about that later, but it's why I'm watching these auctions very carefully. And then the other news was the Lennar putting up that multifamily big property for sale. So another one to watch. But guys, blood in the water on the builders. I don't care what their stock prices look like. I don't care how they sing about their balance sheets. There is about to be a bloody war where they are out there doing everything they can to compete against the smaller builders and compete against their peers and compete against existing and compete against multifamily and compete against, the short-term rental bag holders that can't afford it anymore and compete against long-term rental built for rent. It's about to get really interesting. And I think that, yes, the government is going to find every program, to kind of shore this up. Even in my client books, I'm seeing that a tiny improvement in delinquency month over month. Why? They're using those homeowner assistance funds, HAF funds, state funds, which, it's crazy, but only about as of the end of Q3, only about 60% of those have been spent. But even with those, there are borrowers that are just not going to make it. And so, I think, as you guys know, that's not a big part of my thesis. I think we'll start to see material delinquency, barring physical stimulus or further moratoriums by June. And I think we'll even see the delinquency if we have moratoriums. Okay, guys, I think one of the reasons I can't even talk is because I had so much to say to you today and I was away. And I just kind of want to talk about that real quick. So, I was traveling last week, but I also had a death in the family. I saw out on Twitter, actually, a lot of folks, it seems, and, I don't know about you guys, I can only speak for my experience, but, I've also had a lot of family members pass in the holiday season. And so I just want to take a moment to just kind of recognize that, this time of the year can be very difficult for people. It brings back a lot of memories about maybe people that are no longer with us, about, times because everyone's stressed at the holidays. So the biggest family fights that happen at the holidays, people are stressed about money. They're stressed about expectations, what people expect of them. So as much as, again, our little consumer machine goes out there with its shiny silver sentiment, trying to make us all spend money and trying to make believe that we're all happy. The thing is, guys, this is a challenging time. And so I just kind of want to say that, I hope that as you go out there, don't, it's not that you need to feel pressured to be happy, but I do hope that you can find some joy and you can bring some joy to someone. Because this is a difficult season for most everybody out there. There are those rare few that seem to just love this season, to death. I don't know a lot of those. And so, just know though, we're a community and we're in it together and, try to find those moments where you can bring joy to others because honestly, that's probably how you're going to find your joy. My condolences go out to all of you who have recently lost friends and family members. I'm so sorry, but I hope that you can find some comfort and solace, during this kind of challenging season. And so, I guess I truly am a doomer since I'm kind of conveying this message of, not a holly jolly Christmas, but one more nuanced where there are going to be ups and there are going to be downs. And, the way I kind of see life is it's equal parts good and equal parts bad. But I cherish the good the most. And that's what I focus my thoughts on. So anyway, guys, sorry for that little segue. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad I'm back, I guess. And again, woo, I'm really off today. But I think it is just because I'm excited. I have so much to share with you. But I think the spring is there is going to be a little crazy out there. So get ready. The door's about to open and things are about to get really disorderly. So see you next time and have a wonderful and happy holidays. Thank you so much for joining. And I guess I should say, you can reach me at M3_Melody, M3 Melody Substack, here on YouTube and on LinkedIn. And hoping during the holidays to have a little downtime when my family's ignoring me to actually catch up a comment. So happy holidays, everybody. Thank you again.